Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Crysler. Each episode, we talk to business leaders and subject matter experts to learn about the challenges they've overcome and the challenges they still face. You'll hear fresh insights, real talk, and get inspiration to grow your business. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be welcoming Joseph Gonzalez to the podcast today. Joseph is the founder of In the Game Group, which is a business consulting firm that specializes in organizational structure, finding and placing talented folks, high performers, optimizing and aligning a high-performing team. Joseph, thanks so much for spending your time and coming on the Everyday Business Problems Podcast.
Well, David, before we get into the real juicy and meaty stuff, I want to thank you for even considering me, bringing me on your show. I've been looking forward to this show for quite some time. Since the first day that we met on another podcast, I saw that you were one amazing, talented, brilliant individual. And I said, man, if I could only live up to his standards, I'd be okay. But yeah, like you said, my company's called, I founded In the Game Group, LLC, about 2 years ago, because I saw exactly what was going on in the workforce and with all the challenges that we faced. So my focus has always been, how can I help them bring or bridge the gap between everyone that's involved, bring it together, and have a favorable outcome and try to make it the best possible organization from day one. But anyways, thank you very much. I'm honored. I'm ready to dive in, and I'm looking forward to this. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. Well, I appreciate the kind words, and, feeling is definitely mutual. You just have such a great energy about you. I'm excited to kind of dive into, leadership challenges as we kick off the new year and talking about how do we build those high performance teams that everybody is kind of going after, especially considering all of the things, kind of all of the negative things that we hear about when we dig through social media or look at any of the headlines that are happening today. You've got the quiet quitting, and before that it was, the great resignation and all of these things. So, kind of kicking things off, I mean, what are some of the things that you see as you're going into these organizations that, really effective, high-performing teams? What are some of the characteristics that you recognize going into some of the organizations that you've worked with?
Those are very good questions, or great questions, actually. And you know what? And a lot of people think that the great resignation, the quiet quitting, the quiet firing, the disengagement, the terrible culture, the environment, that's new stuff. No, those are just new. Now, everybody's starting to use and not to say that they're buzzwords, but, the quiet quitting, the great resignation. But if you look over time, culture, engagement, quitting, firing, hiring, retaining, attracting has always been going on. Now, what's happened over years is that now it's being brought out to light. A lot of people have been noticing more. They've been getting a feel for what's actually happening or transitioning within their immediate organization, or if you work in other organizations, how other organizations tend to operate. And yes, and the way, like I tell everybody, the way the organization operates, it's a direct reflection on their leadership team. Because if your organization is not up to speed, or let's say operating the way that it should, it's not because Joe is not doing what he's supposed to do. It's because, or David, let's say, I use Joe, it's me, but it's because the leadership, there might be a gap. What I found most of the times is there's a gap between the leadership team and then the tiered down teams, the vice presidents, the directors, the managers, the supervisors, and the information is getting clogged up or getting stuck between those teams there. And the same information that maybe the leaders are trying to convey out to their people, it's getting maybe defined or interpreted different down to the lower ranks and not getting to where it needs to go. So what I say to everybody is, okay, I know you're bringing me in for all these things that you say are not optimized. Can you identify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the things that are going right? Because I know I walked in, and I'll give you a perfect example. I've been working with a flower company. They're from South America, and their train of thought is, pay less, work more. So then, and they're doing good. They're a small company. They're grossing, I'd say, 20, 30 million, selling flowers, dude. I mean, what more do you want?
It's a lot of flowers.
Exactly. They're importing and exporting. But their workforce is like I told you. I walked in, and they're bringing Stranger Joe. I was referred to them, and they started, dictating how things were going wrong. So when I let them, I let them get to that point and say, okay, identify for me some of the things that are going right in your organization. So then, obviously, when you bring an outsider in, and let's say the owners, the top leadership team, you're going to get kickback. You're going to get resistance, because who's this guy, Joe, that's going to tell us we've been operating 20, 30 million bucks a year. We're doing good. Who's this guy going to tell me that we can't do this better, or we can do it better? So then I always at that point in time, Dave, what I found is that I become an information gatherer. I like to see. I want to ask certain questions so that I can get as much information as I can, so that I can even see if I'm a good fit to help them out. So once I gather my information, and like I said, I'll pose a question, okay, give me something that's been going good. So once they identify, some will identify a couple, some will identify a little bit more. But to me, it's always been, let me build off the good, and then once we get the gooder, then we can build off of everything else that's going on. And I'm a transparent type of an individual. I think you know that. I'm high energy. I'll bring it every day, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure that if you bring in Joe, you're going to get the desired results that you brought me in. And I know this is a little bit off topic as far as leadership, but it's one of the practices that I found that has been so powerful in the transitioning of how leadership thinks and how leadership feels about its people. Because I've walked into some organizations, Dave, and they've told me that, no, he's just a janitor. I almost came out of my chair.
Yeah.
You know what? He is just a janitor, but he's a janitor in your organization. Why is he being treated or being looked at any different than the president? No, he doesn't make the 20 million, 30 million, but he makes his salary, and his work is what's making your organization look cleaner and better today. So don't toss at me that he's just a janitor. I'm insulted by that.
Yeah.
Because that dictates exactly their mental approach to their organization. So now I jump in with my tougher questions. Well, what makes you, and I had this gentleman, and I told him, well, what makes you better than him, dude? Oh, you should have seen his face when I said, dude.
I love it.
You're telling me he's just a janitor? I'm going to tell you, you're just a dude.
Yeah.
And he said, dude? I said, yeah. What do you want me to call you? He's just a janitor. You're just a dude. I'm a dude. So are you. And you know what? What I found is once I start drilling, asking the questions that are required, how is your vice president? Have you walked the corridors? Have you asked your employees? How do they feel today? Hey, what are their struggles? How can I help you? How can I make you better? What can I do based on I'm the president, the CEO, to make your life better? Not your work life. What can I do to make your personal life? Is your family okay? Are your children okay? Are you sure you're doing all right? How do you feel mentally? Do you feel like you're not up to yourself? Do you feel your mind is not set where it needs to be to perform your duties? Do we need to realign you? Do we need to, offer some options to get you back engaged like you were, let's say 6 months ago? So that's how those are some of the processes that I go out about building out basically an organization, teams, leadership. A lot of these guys, they understand what it takes, but they're reluctant to change what's been in place for so many years because they are scared of the immediate change and what it might bring about after they make the changes. Yeah. And what I've let them understand is what I've told them is, listen, the only thing that you need to change is your mental approach to your leadership style. It doesn't mean that it's bad, because I never like to use a negative thought process. It doesn't mean that it's bad. I just feel we can implement different my mental approaches to leadership strategies that can help you help your people become the better people that they are. So leaders in today's day and age, I had a gentleman, and I spoke to him, I'd say about 2 months ago, CEO of a company, 30 years. His mentality was just one of those guys, grind, grind, grind. I'm the top of the guy. Nobody can bring me down. And the whole bit. And what I found was he was a fantastic and brilliant individual. I mean, way smarter than me. So I'm even surprised that he wanted to get me on the phone. We kind of like, yeah, because, you know, I mean, this guy's making a lot of money. He's been a CEO for X amount of years. And he's active on LinkedIn for 30-something years. And he reached out to me because, hey, I like your videos, dude. It sounds like you're a fun guy. Let's talk. And the talking turned into leadership. And I hear it in his voice when I tell him, I think you're doing it wrong. No, but you know, Joe, you know, no, dude, you're doing it wrong. And after the conversation, I've spoken to him now, I'd say 2 or 3 more times after our initial conversation. And what a magnificent, powerful, great-hearted, I mean, a guy that you'll see him and you will know that's not the same individual. So long story short, building out teams, you definitely have to build out the mindset of those that are involved in building out your teams. Because the most powerful aspect of a team building exercise is preparing the mind to make sure that it accepts the information that's being tossed at them at all times. So you're familiar with me. I use a system called Kolbe, Kolbe. And that works on your instinctive strengths. What does that do for me? Once I run a Kolbe assessment on Dave, let's say, it'll provide me with 4 numbers. Those 4 numbers will fall into 4 categories. It'll be fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer. Based on those 4 numbers, I can tell you how you're going to operate if I put you in this environment every single day of your life. Because there's 3 parts of the mind. You have your cognitive mind, which is your learned behaviors. You have your affective, which is your personality traits. And you have your cognitive or your cognation, which is the way you operate, or your MO is what they call it, your mode of operation. Out of the 3 parts of the mind, that's the only one that will never change over a lifetime. So I'll take 10 people in an organization and I'll run Kolbe A systems, and it'll tell me exactly how they operate. I'll throw them into a team leader board that I have, and it'll place them where they should be within that team.
That's amazing.
That'll give me an idea. That'll give me an idea of how they will operate if I bring them and I assign them a program, or they're going to start an assignment for me. I'll know exactly how they will start and how they will end the program. And I'll tell you, me, for example, my numbers are 8, 7, 2, 3. That means I'm a high fact finder. So that tells me I like to do research. So imagine if you like to do research as well. What's going to happen? We're going to research the hell out of everything. And we're not going to get anything done. We'll research,
right.
You know? And then I like fact finder, which is my 7. My second is to systemize. So imagine if we're seeing research, and then try to systemize. Okay, but where else does it go?
Yeah.
Where else does it go? Because my implementer is a 3. So I have the vision of where I think it should go, but I don't take it there. So, I mean, it's an interesting concept because it's based on the fact that it wants you to be free to be yourself. And if I let Dave be Dave, what are the chances Dave is going to be more productive on that team than if I try to dictate every move you make?
Yeah, 100%.
Of leadership, team building, etc. I know I went on a little long, but that's the idea.
No, I love it. I mean, so many great things in there to kind of unpack. You know, I think it's great too, kind of your approach on things in terms of, you know, the assessment and putting some real facts behind where people are at, because, you know, often whether we're talking about the leadership team or as we get down into, you know, kind of the trenches and the people that are doing the heavy lifting, so often we kind of look at those people in those scenarios and kind of say, well, you know, why can't Joe do this? Why can't Dave do this? Why do they look at things this way instead of looking at things the way I'm looking at them? And, and I think kind of to your point earlier, I think what happens in these scenarios is that from the leadership perspective, you often think that you are clearly articulating what the plan is. You're clearly articulating that you've taken all things into consideration, that you're welcoming ideas, and that you've, thoughtfully considered all of these different aspects. And, here's the decision that we're moving forward. And the reality is that, sometimes in our kind of, ability for some of us to kind of take all of those inputs and make very quick decisions and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Sometimes we don't have the ability to clearly articulate that to our team, which then kind of creates this issue of dissension and, oh, Dave never listens to us. Dave never takes into account any of our ideas. It's, always Dave making the decision, and, therefore we have zero input, and therefore, our morale is getting low because, all we have to do is just listen to every single thing that, Dave decides. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk about and give me your opinion on that kind of gap between what leaders think that they're communicating and how they're kind of coming across versus what often happens is, that gap and misinterpretation between what they think is happening and what their team actually hears.
It's funny you would say it because everybody, when they go to build a team, what do they say? Oh, we're going to put a team together, right?
Yeah.
And you know what happens when they say they're going to put a team together? They'll delegate one person to oversee the project, and then they'll have 2 or 3 that they think in their mind are high performers, and they'll try to take control of the whole process. What people have to understand is, the project, let's say the project gets done on time, everything in their mind goes great, and everything, it goes as planned. But have you ever sat down with that same team after everything went and put an after action? Let's sit down, see what went on during the whole project. Joe and Dave, oh, dude, we couldn't even say a word. These two guys and these 2 girls over here took over. And it's like, dude, they didn't let us breathe it. And if anybody understands what a team is, it's cohesiveness, communication, everybody together. Everybody, look, the most valuable thing that I can provide for anybody that I work with is a safe and trusted environment where they have the right to be themselves. I want Dave to tell me what's on his mind because I know Dave has what it takes.
Yeah.
Why would I want to silence Dave? Dave isn't Joe. Joe will never be Dave. No matter how much I want to be like you, I will never be you because we are 2 different individuals. And that is the power of the team. Let me bring in my insights. Let me bring in my thought process. Let me bring in my mental approaches to help us get to where we want to go. When I have to sit there, if I have to sit in a room and not be able to provide my input into how we are going to get it done, I will get up and go. Look, you guys don't need me. I appreciate it. I love you guys, but it's time for me to go. And you know what's funny? I've walked into organizations and I've sat there and I've told these guys, you know what? I think I am not the right fit for you. I'd love to sign up and get the money, but I can already tell you I might not be the right fit for you guys. What do you mean, Joe? I said, look, I like transparency. I like to be able to do my job. I like to be left free to perform my duties because then at the end of the day, when you don't get your desired results, it's going to fall back on Joe. And the first thing we're going to say is we paid Joe X amount of dollars and he didn't achieve the desired results that we want. No, it's not that. You guys didn't let me be free to be myself, to perform at the way that I know I can perform because you did X, Y, Z, which kept me away from doing what I needed to do. So when you talk about a team environment, what is the most powerful aspect of a team, Dave? What in your mind do you think is the most powerful aspect of a team?
I think, it's all the personalities and inputs that you're getting. It's that, cohesive diverse nature. Yeah. And diverse. Thank you. Great word there. Yeah.
Everybody's involved. That's why it's a team. Listen, we'll use the basketball narrative. Michael Jordan, the best player in basketball, people would argue, right? Could he win 7 championships by himself?
Yeah. No way.
No way. And he himself would say it. Yeah, I'm Michael Jordan, but without these guys here, I can't win. Tom Brady, greatest football player, greatest quarterback of all time. Can he catch and throw the ball and run and defend and everything by himself? Absolutely not. So if you take anything away from a team, just take a look at what you're considering your team to be and understand, get to know your team members. Why do you want to build out a team and only put a project manager and then not have him interview his team members to see where they would fit in during this project? Dave is a very honed-in guy. He might fit on this end. Joe is a little bit more unstructured. He might fit on this end. But the whole team can come together and build out the project, and everybody do exactly what they were supposed to do because they're being free to be themselves. And one of the major things that I found in organizations, and I hound on this a lot because to me, it's a very serious thing. If you are not letting me free to be myself and my roles and responsibilities don't align with who Joe is, there's 3 things that are going to happen. And it's huge now, and it's another buzzword, but we'll throw it: stress, anxiety, and burnout.
Yeah.
Because today I start, but okay, I'm doing good. But then all of a sudden, I'm not doing as good. And then they just play, oh, you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Oh, no, I just take an aspirin, it's a headache. Oh, you just didn't get enough sleep. Oh, no. But you know what? 6 months down the road, Joe's burnt out. Now what?
Yeah.
Now what? So there's a lot of things that go. Team building is the word that we all understand in organizations, but there's a lot more that goes into building a team than just putting 10 people together and hoping that they perform. Or if the project does finish on time and the revenue or the money does come in, they feel it's a successful team and project, when in reality, it might not be. Yes, it got done, but does that mean success for every team member on the team? So there has to be a certain level of communication, cohesiveness, everything that goes into the team building atmosphere. But one of the most powerful aspects that I've understood for team building is just let Joe be Joe and take in the information that he has to provide and use it for what it's worth on the team that you've put Joe on, and see if he's a good fit before you assign Joe to that team. And a lot of organizations struggle with that because you see it all. I see it every day. You walk into an organization and there's people in roles that have certain responsibilities that they don't meet the qualifications, not because they're not great people, because it's not there. They're not skilled up or skilled up to meet the role. And then these people are dictating other people's lives, and it's just out of hand.
Oh yeah. You know? Yeah. And then to your point too earlier, in terms of, kind of that burnout and, stress component, oftentimes what I'll see is, sometimes you have people that are kind of more emotionally receptive to those things anyway. And so therefore they kind of become, almost, lack of a better term, kind of the dumping ground for other people to unload their stress onto. So now they're taking all of this burden, of all of the people, on their team throughout an organization. And you want to talk about an impact on people, and that's how you end up, cycling through people. And, the other part of that, I think, that ends up happening in terms of, people cycling in and out is, you referenced it a bit earlier, but it's, as teams are being built out, as you are working on specific projects or bringing people together, there's a significant amount of kind of resource and investment that's been made into these folks. And I mean, how many times have you gone into an organization where you hear from the leadership that, well, this person or that person isn't kind of working out for this reason or that reason. And, it's a bit like you kind of just want to say, do you recognize what amount of money you've already invested into this team member, what amount of money you're looking to invest in replacing this team member, all the while you have no idea what types of outside influences, you have no idea what's going on with the person and, why is this becoming an issue? So it's kind of like, we're making all of these decisions without really having all of the facts at our, at our fingertips. It's completely incredible to me. I'm sure you've seen that time and time again.
right? And I got a number that I've tossed around for quite some time, and I'm sure you might have heard it. The turnover rate has cost organizations in the last 5 years $233 billion. So when I go into an organization, I said, well, how much do you want to contribute to that? How much do you want to continue to contributing to that? Well, what do you mean? I said, well, the only thing I've heard is that we had to let go of Tom, Dick, and Harry. But did you ever get to interview Tom, Dick, and Harry and ask them why or what's going on or what's going on in our organization? Because it's easy to blame Tom, Dick, and Harry that doesn't have that CEO position or title or compensation and always continue the blame game. And a lot of organizations continue to function in that manner. They always blame the lower end employee because they're easier to get rid of. They don't see the number. They only see, oh, we'll get rid of that person. We can replace them and bring somebody else in. But have you ever interviewed the person that person reports to and the other one that person reports to, and to see if it's not this end the problem and not Tom, Dick, and Harry the problem? Because how many times are you going to sit there and fire the same position, the same title over and over and over again and never look and see why it always gets fired, or why they continue to fire there, or why they can't retain? You know, it's funny. Everybody in America, in every world, say, oh, we're going to have a recruiting job fair, recruiting. And when I hear that word, I said, dude, have you ever thought about maybe attracting people? You know, what's wrong with attracting event?
Yeah.
Let's attract our talent. And I'll tell you one thing. I understand business a little bit. I'm a dumb guy, but I understand business a little bit. And if you want top talent, what do you have to do? You have to pay top money.
Yeah.
You can't expect to bring in Dave, the master. Hey, no, Dave, you know, it's an entry-level position. We're going to give you $10 an hour. And expect Dave to perform at a $5 million level for $10 an hour. You brought in the wrong guy.
Yeah.
So everybody wants talent nowadays, but nobody wants to pay top dollar for top talent. And it's sad to hear, because if I'm the CEO and I'm getting paid $40 million a year, why wouldn't I want to pay my people the adequate amount that justifies their level of expertise, what their skill set? Why would I want to pay them what they deserve to get paid based on their current skill set? And I'll go back to what you originally said. There's always that one person that takes the brunt of everything. All the complaints, all the unhappiness, all the disengagement, all the stress, all the anxiety. You're always going to find that guy. And you know what's funny? I was always in that position because I'm always the high energy, the funny, the happy, the humor, the great day, the positive attitude. And I would get those people.
Yeah.
But you know what? I accepted the challenge because I knew they weren't aware of why I would accept the challenge, but I knew what they were going through. And I knew what they were up against. And I knew that at least for this moment, they had somebody that will be watching or looking over their back and accept them for who they are and not for what somebody else wanted them to be. So I would at least bring them that one moment of happiness that they can come and say, Joe, you know what? This and this and this and this. And I've been known to be one that does go against the flow. I'm not fish. I'm not going with the flow.
I love it. I love it. But, you know, I mean, what's interesting to me, and this came up the other day, and I think it's, you know, it's like that perspective, that mindset shift. And I think after some sort of period of time, you kind of recognize these things. You know, I think when you, for a lot of leaders, right, they want people that surround them that kind of, you know, immediately agree. And yes, this is a great idea. I'm going to support this. And what you realize over the course of time is that you really do need people to go against the grain and to push your thinking and to, you know, question your ideas. Because that's where the real magic happens. You know, if you're constantly surrounded by people that just, are blindly agreeing with everything that you do, more than a lot of responsibility falls on your shoulders because, now everything is tied back to you. And while most of it is when you're in a leadership position anyway, what I've found is that when you find those people that kind of go against the grain, that are always, kind of rubbing you back and saying, well, that's not going to work. This isn't going to happen. That's a problem. While it could be frustrating in the moment, those are really, really valuable folks to tap into. And, that could be a real challenge for leaders to kind of embrace that because what I find is that they think, well, I don't want somebody challenging my decision. And, from my perspective, it's not challenging your decision, it's challenging your ideas. There's a big difference there, So, I mean, would you say the same thing from that perspective?
Yeah, I'll start, there's 4 zones of life. There's growth. I mean, there's, I lost my train of thought here. There's complacency, there's fear, there's learning, and there's growth. Most of these individuals, most of these individuals live in the comfort and fear zones because they've been at the leadership position for so long. The organization, it looks like it's making money, and they stay in that zone, and they don't want change. They don't want to be challenged, and they don't want to do anything that's going to maybe rock the boat, or they don't want to try to reinvent the wheel. So when you understand that the only way that your organization can get from where it is right now, that's been operating at a good level for the 5 years, to that peak performing level, you have to accept to learn, and you have to understand that you must grow. And one of the biggest, that gentleman that I was talking to you about, he gave me so much respect when I challenged his mental approach to leadership, that he says, you know what, Joe, that is what I needed today. He might hang up the phone and say, this dude's crazy, I don't want to talk to him again. But he said, that is what I needed today. And when he talks to me, the first thing that comes out of his mind, the first thing that comes out of his voice, he laughs. Because he says, dude, just talking to you you make me laugh. Yeah. And I said, well, so-and-so, it's not that. It's the fact that I understand where you're at. I understand what you've been through, and I understand how you process the information that I personally tossed at you, because I think I have a good grip on what you need to do and where you want to go. So I have a couple different exercises, actually like 40 or 50 different exercises that I give these individuals just to practice on themselves, because leadership starts with the leader.
Yeah.
If the leader isn't right, nothing's going to move forward. When I hear these individuals say, no, because, I got to get them ready. Well, have you ever gotten yourself ready first?
Yeah.
Because if nothing changes, nothing's going to change. You're going to continue to go around in that uncertain space, and you're going to continue to be the same individual. If I can't sit here and listen to the information that Dave has that is of value to me and learn from it, then I'm in the wrong position. I'm not a real person, and I'm not accepting of what Dave wants to offer me, which is what I need to hear at this moment. So the first thing that I want to do is address the leadership, or the leadership team if they want to do it with 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because that's where the magic, like you said, the magic will begin. When I challenge their thought process, when I challenge the way that they're thinking, when I challenge the way that they process the information, and when I challenge them with implementing the strategies, the ideas, and the exercises that I know will make them better. But there's a fine line at times that I have to try to walk, and I always walk it on the side of the most dangerous side. Yeah, it's like you said, I don't want to go in there and be the yes man.
Yeah.
Because you don't need me for that. If you need somebody to be a yes man, you just continue doing what you're doing and don't even bring me in. I know I'm not made for everybody, but everybody's not made for me. And that's one of the famous things that I tell everybody. But what I will bring in is a different approach to how your organization takes care of its people. Because the bottom line in any organization is its people. I don't care how much an individual says, yes, no, maybe. The bottom line and what makes you, the CEO Dave, look great are your people. So
Yeah.
my suggestion to everybody is dig deep within yourself, look at yourself, and understand what you're doing to support the people that are making you look good. And I
Yeah.
won't budge from that, because that is the bottom line. And I don't care what position or what title or what compensation they're making, the same integrity, the same honesty, the same respect you want, you need to give it to everyone else. I suggested to one individual, I asked them, how many times have you been down the hallways of your office in the last couple of years? Oh, I don't have time for that. What? You don't want to jump over the desk and grab by the neck. You don't have time for that. How about if I'm your employee and I tell you, and you tell me, oh, pick that up. No, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
How would they like that? So,
Yeah.
you know, disengagement of leadership, and obviously Jeff Bezos, he can't walk around to talk to every employee that he has. But he has to make sure, being that top guy, that everyone that's in the tier down positions has the ability to interact, to engage, to provide a safe, a trusted work environment for everybody to come up to him and say, hey, look, today I'm not feeling good. I think this is where I'm at. What do you guys think? What can you do to help me out?
Yeah.
When you get employees that, like we just spoke about, aren't all there, that's where the magic ends.
Yeah.
Because an organization will tend to struggle, and then we'll get the quiet quitting, the resignation, the turnover, the loss of interest, the burnout, the stress. And then what does that do? One incident can ruin a whole organization, or at least part of an organization, if it's not well equipped to handle that type of an individual. And
Yeah.
you know, it's sad to see people going through that when their organizations do not step up for them. Because for me, I take that personal. I understand what it is to not have the support of organizations, but I've always been a hard-nosed little dude, and I step up for myself, and I don't back down. It's all or nothing, or have a good day, and I love you guys, but it's time to go, and you guys are going to continue doing the same. And there's sometimes it gets real tricky when you walk in and you try to bring about change. But those are just some of the ideas and stuff. But it's going to continue. What most organizations fail to realize right now is we went through the first wave of that so-called great resignation. Believe me, if they don't start changing the way that they do business, hold on, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, and it's interesting too, because I like what you said to kind of kick things off, that, you know, because I firmly believe and agree with you that this isn't new stuff, right? But what's new about it is I feel like we've kind of seen this shift where people, you know, in the trenches feel enough confidence that there's enough other opportunities available, or that they're just going to figure it out, right? That they've kind of become confident enough to kind of stand up and make these things known. And to your point, you know, it impacts all different types of businesses. It doesn't matter the size, you know, and some people might think, oh, the bigger the business, the easier time they have. And, you know, in a lot of cases, the opposite is true, because the ship is so big that, you know, you lose a few key people and then you get some turnover in there. And then it's that entire trickle down, you know, situation where all things are now impacted. You know, before maybe it was just on the customer facing side. And then, you know, maybe it's something that, you know, is in the operations side. And then, you know, that starts to impact supply chain. And, you know, before you know, you've got all these dominoes falling all over you. So yeah, it's, you know, it's definitely something that people have to pay attention to. But again, to your point, it starts with the leadership, folks. It starts at the very tippy top and works your way down mostly into that middle management layer. And, you know, depending on the org structure, yeah, that could be team leads. That could be, you know, kind of all different types of individuals, maybe not necessarily with a specific leadership title. But, you know, if you're not giving those folks kind of the tools and the support necessary you know, you're going to be in for a long, a long road, so to speak, you know, for the next handful of years until, you know, potentially that tide shifts again. But, you know, I don't see it shifting back. I really don't. I think this is kind of, you know, people talked about what the new normal was coming out of COVID. I think this is the new normal, that, you know, if you're an organization not paying attention from a leadership perspective, giving those folks the tools to encourage and support the people doing the real heavy lifting on a day-to-day basis, if you're not in tune with what's happening with that, you're really going to struggle to not just grow your business, but to have a sustainable business for any length of time. So
a lot of these organizations talk about sustainability, but a 1 or 2 year plan. Because sustainability is a 1 or 2 year. Sustainability is a long term. So if you don't have the structure, the leadership structure that's required to go for the long haul, you know, you got to be in for the long ball, like we all say, that you're going to be in a lot of trouble. What they fail to realize, and I bring this up all the time, I said, before the employer was in charge, now the employee is in charge. Why? Because your neighbor offer your guy $3, $4, $5 more an hour and provides them with opportunities, with growth, with safe, with trusted, with a diverse, with an inclusive, with an empathetic leadership team that's going to build that individual into that individual that he wants to be. And one of the biggest terms a word that drives me insane. No, we're going to maximize Joe. Dude, you're not going to maximize anybody. We're not machines.
yeah,
You want to optimize Joe to be the best he can be. But you maximize Joe, you're going to burn him out in no time. Because now you're thinking Joe's a machine that's going to turn on and off when you want. And that drives me insane. No, we're trying to maximize our employees for our profit growth, our return on investment, and this and that. So I instantly say, okay, your ROI. Have you ever thought about your ROPI? Oh, what is that? Well, your return on your people investment. Why don't you invest in your people so you can get a higher ROI at the end of the year? The more you invest in your people, the more money you're going to make at the end. And you're just going to be cruising because everybody knows they can be free. They can be themselves and that they have leadership support coming down from the top and not being dictated down or not being the communication gap not being there. All these things that go on.
Yeah.
And then you'll see how your organization will be sustainable over a long term or a long ball, like we say. But a lot of organizations continue to fail at that leadership point because, the leadership might be great, but then they disengage and let the others try to run the organization, and the bad habits start climbing in, start creeping back in, and it starts bringing down the environment, the culture, the engagement, the employees, the turnover. And there you go again. It's that snowball effect. And you're going to start doing everything that you built up to doing. Now you just let it all go back down and you have to start it all over again. But what they fail to realize that within those 5 to 3 years, how much money did it cost you?
Yeah.
You're complaining about employee turnover. You're complaining about overtime. You're complaining about wages. You're complaining about salaries. But did you look at what caused all of that to begin with? Why don't you sit down? You have it. It's measurable. Why don't you sit down and measure and see where you're going wrong? It doesn't mean that Joe's perfect. It just means that why don't you look and see where you went wrong so that you can address it and now let it continue.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, you know, the backwards steps and slides seem to happen much faster than the growth effort does. So,
and that's part of organizations.
Yeah.
Look, no organization can sit here and tell you that they boom every single year, that everything's perfect, because it's not going to be perfect. There's so much that goes into org structure, like you say, that it might not always be perfect. But if you can address it, once you notice, if you have the right people in place that can maybe try to reel it in before it gets out of hand, you have a better chance of not falling into that zone again, where most of these organizations fall into.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agree. Joseph, as we kind of wrap things up, I'd love to give you an opportunity. I know, believe it or not, right? Or we're going to have to sign up for a part 2 of this amazing conversation. So
let's go.
Any final thoughts, anything that you want to leave people with in terms of, kind of this culture and leadership piece as we kick off this new year and a new set of challenges, or maybe an old set of challenges that are newly facing. So any final thoughts for everybody out there?
For me, it's always been about the individual. You must believe in yourself. You must value yourself. And you must not let anybody take advantage of you just because they feel they have a position or a title or X amount of compensation. And another thing that I tell everybody is your value does not decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. If you don't value yourself, nobody's going to give you the value that you deserve. So step up for yourself and fight your good fight the right way. Continue to maintain your integrity, your honesty, your dignity, and look out for yourself. And for those that want to get a hold of me, I'm here on LinkedIn 365, 24/7. I have an air mattress on LinkedIn. Just reach out to me. I'll be on LinkedIn, as Dave is always as well. Like I said, Dave, this opportunity is priceless for me. You're one amazing and brilliant individual. I'm just glad to be able to be part of your podcast, and I look forward to great things for you. And I wish you and your family the best. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much. An awesome conversation. Thanks so much for sharing so much of your wisdom around this leadership and team building piece. Definitely valuable for people out there, valuable for me. And Joseph, thanks again for coming on the Everyday Business Problems podcast.
Thank you, buddy. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening today. If we brought you any value, please rate, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media by searching @The Crysler Club. Until next week, I'm your host, Dave Crysler.